Yesterday, as I sat down to sort of finish up writing the sermon, I took a minute to read my email. And I saw that Father had sent out, as he does every week, a little bulletin about what the reading was going to be today and about some of the events coming up. And so I read, and I quote, "This Sunday, we hear the ever-familiar parable of the prodigal son. Instead of thinking who you are in this parable, ask yourself what this parable is calling you to do." And I thought, oh heck, there goes my sermon. Because you see, I had planned on telling you a story. I was going to tell you the story about the time many years ago when I gave my niece, Jodie Ann, who was 4 at that time, a book that was titled Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. I was going to tell you that when Jodie got that book, she was so excited about the title and that she had her mom read it for her immediately. And her mom told me that she carried that book around with her like a security blanket for days and days. And I thought I was going to tell you that perhaps Jodie identified with the character Alexander because even at 4, she had had some pretty lousy days that just went downhill. Poor Alexander, before he even got to school, had bubble gum in his hair and had lost his allowance. And it just spiraled downhill from there. And he thought maybe if I lived in Australia, things would be better. It was going to be a really good story. But then, instead of thinking who you are in this parable, ask yourself what this parable is calling you to do. So then I said, oh, maybe Jodie not only related to Alexander, but she had learned a life-changing lesson from the book. You see, Alexander realized that other people had horrible, terrible, no good, very bad days. But you could get through it with the help and encouragement of other people. And I know that that's a life-changing lesson because Jodie now has 2 children under 10, and I bet they've had some terrible, horrible, no good, very bad days, and she has to encourage them through. The story that we just heard is one of the best-known parables that Jesus told. Probably, if any, second maybe to the Good Samaritan, but both Christians and non-Christians are familiar with the story. And I think it's a gift from Jesus, that story. A gift from Luke, the gospel writer. He's the only one that includes that parable in his account of Jesus' life and work. And we are drawn in by that title, the Prodigal Son. And often it pulls us in to think of the ways that maybe we are the prodigal son, or maybe we know a prodigal son. We know someone who through their own mistakes, their own misguided ways have gone astray, have found themselves in places that are messy, that are oppressive, that they don't know how to get out of. But you know, even though this is not the focus of the sermon, sometimes we might want to name that parable the older brother or the brother who feels that he has been overlooked. Because you know, sometimes we are on the road, the straight and narrow. We've got that call. We know what our mission and our ministry is. We work hard at things that are in God's plan, and nobody, not even God it seems, sees us. So sometimes we understand that older brother. But maybe today you feel like that father. Maybe you know someone, a loved one, who has gone astray, who is out of your care, out of your house, out of your umbrella of love and comfort, and you worry. You wait. You hope. You look out for that person, hoping that they will return so that you can comfort, lift up, and support them. Maybe you are the waiting, anxious parent. But what can we take from this sermon? What is it calling us to do, since that is what we are looking at today? We have to remember that the Prodigal Son is one of 3 parables that Jesus told in response to a comment of expression of lack of lack of understanding about his mission. The Pharisees and the scribes had noticed that Jesus was keeping company with sinners and outcasts, and that was not what people of God did. So they were being critical, and Jesus told 3 parables. The first parable was about a shepherd who had 100 sheep, and one was missing. One had gone astray. And the shepherd left the 99 to go look for that sheep. And when the shepherd found the sheep and brought that sheep home safely, so happy that all were back together again, the shepherd had a party, called neighbors, called other shepherds, had a party and rejoiced at finding the sheep. And Jesus said that in the same way, heaven rejoices when a lost sinner returns home. Then Jesus told the story of the woman who loses a very valuable coin. And she spends all evening, all night searching for this coin. And when she finds it, she too calls her friends and they have a party and rejoices. And Jesus says, in the same way, heaven rejoices when a sinner returns home. And then Jesus tells the story of the prodigal son. There was a man with 2 sons. And we know that one is going to be lost. And we know that one is going to be found. And we anticipate that there is going to be a party. But what is our takeaway? My hope this morning, my great belief, the good news that I hear in this parable this morning has to do with Lent. Because Lent is also a gift for us. It's a gift from the church. Time for us to remember that when we are the prodigal son, we can turn around and go back home. And that we are going to be met with welcome. In fact, God is going to meet us on the way back. Can we too be people who, when we have to forgive others, meet them halfway there? And we remember too that Lent is a time when we reflect on our own spiritual journey. And perhaps if you have felt overlooked as you serve, if you have felt not counted as you give your all, perhaps if in Lent you sit and remember, you will know that God was with you all the way. You too have been invited to the party. That father in that story stepped over his threshold, not once but twice. Once to greet the prodigal son, the other time to welcome, to implore, to beg the second son to come to the party. Or perhaps this Lent, you can think of those who are lost to you in some way, those who you have broken ties with, whether through your fault or not, and think of the ways that you can mend and restore relationships, that you can celebrate the unity that happens as a result. And then perhaps the name of this story will become the one who throws a party when all are home safely. That is a good takeaway for today, for this season, for life. And maybe like Jody, who carried around the book Alexander and the, what is the story? and the horrible, terrible, no good, very bad day. Perhaps we can carry the story of the prodigal son with us through life. Amen. Amen.